Welcome to the Babbling Pastor Podcast, the greatest podcast on the entire internet. I am your host, Michael. Welcome to the Babbling Pastor
That
Podcast.
would make you the greatest host on the entire internet.
That's one of the greatest hosts. I am
Well,
one of two. You're right though. If this is the greatest, let's work through this. If this is the greatest podcast on the entire internet, and we are the host of said podcast, we are the two greatest hosts on the internet. Deductive reasoning. I like it. I like that a lot.
Listen, if some people could be under the impression that Joe Biden wasn't asleep for his entire presidency, then certainly we can pull this lie off, right?
Oh my gosh.
Like this is like Joe Rogan wishes. That's all that's all I got to say, Joe who, since we're on Joe's
production level, preparedness, professionality, intelligence level. I mean, what else? What? I'm filming from my basement. What else? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, I know it looks like a multi-million dollar set here, but it's not. It's not.
I mean, I pay for the books behind me, so sometimes I feel like this is a multi-million dollar set.
Sure.
But
let's estimate the value of the books behind Rob. It's enough to buy a new car, perhaps. I don't know.
Maybe not new,
like a used, like a nice used Nissan, perhaps.
Yeah, probably. If all of this were just,
money,
like when these books were new and I wouldn't have spent the money and just put it away, I could probably pay my truck off for sure.
Yeah. I mean, but can you quantify in monetary value the knowledge? Really? You really can't.
No.
Quantify, no.
Of course not.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
the knowledge that I don't quite have yet because there's no way I've read all of these books. But
it's the basically the Library of Alexandria behind you. I mean, right? The Library of Robazanlia. I don't know. What would you name a country?
Hopefully, what would I name a country? Ooh, that's good.
After you, yeah, because
the United States. There is no other country. No. The New Jerusalem. There we go.
Oh,
that's the only one I care about.
I thought you were gonna go with something else named Rob something, but yeah, I take the high road. I appreciate you making all the rest of us look bad. Okay, so
figure out what like New Heavens and New Earth in Latin, and then like some derivative of that, maybe. Yeah,
and then get like a Greek tattoo of New Heaven, New Earth
on
your shoulders.
Yeah.
Or New Heaven, New Earth on your biceps, and just boom.
Yeah. Yeah, these are my guns. I think maybe though before I spend the money on that, I'm gonna get a phylactery tattooed right here, like right on my forehead. I think that'd be sweet.
Okay, face tattoos age really well, so I'm sure that's not a bad idea at all. So,
oh boy.
Don't have to put that.
There aren't even rails. We're so far off. Like we can't even see the rails. No, yeah, they don't even exist.
Well, I mean, sometimes you get put in a position where nobody can be like, this can't be redeemed. But actually, it can be. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about something feeling so far gone that you're like, can it be redeemed? Maybe it can be. Maybe it can be. So we're going to go over, we referenced this in one of the previous episodes. Rob brought up, actually it was the first one, I think. You brought up Hulk Hogan's death. I think it was the first episode when I was frantically trying to figure out how to get his theme song. And so, anyway, so Hulk Hogan, by the time this airs, it's going to be like a month since Hulk Hogan died. But a lot of people are sharing this video where Hulk Hogan, or I don't even know his real name. That's his stage name, obviously. But he gets baptized. He, from all accounts, seems to have become a Christian last year or the year before. And and so that seems to be the quotes that came after that. Again, I don't know the dude. I didn't live anywhere near him. I don't know his life. I don't know if anything changed, but it seems to be that something may have happened in his life and changed, and that he became a follower of Jesus. And so, one of the things that keeps coming up, and this is one of the things I really want to talk about because I think this is a very interesting conversation. Similar things were said because Ozzy Osbourne died recently as well, and some similar claims were made about him. I don't know the truth factor of any of those, but what's really interesting is that both of these men, again, aside from the fact that I don't know their hearts and I don't know the actual eternal resting place of either one of them, but a lot of discussion has been had on um on what that looks like for somebody to live a life in such a way. In Hulk Hogan's case, a lot of people seem to be bringing up, I guess he was really racist most of his life. And so they're bringing that up, and it's the age old discussion of, right, almost not quite, but almost like a deathbed confession sort of situation. Like, how do you live
Hmm.
your life, this way your entire life, and then you Christians say these people can be redeemed and reconciled, in the last year of their life, in regards to Hulk Hogan, or in the last, moments of their life. um and I thought that would be a very interesting discussion because there's a lot of people, for two different reasons. One, just to talk about that, God's grace. Um, I feel like Jesus maybe told a parable about that, and then also about the reality of what it means to not give up hope for those that we do know that are far from God, and the continual, need to continually intercede and pray for them in regards to God, revealing Himself to them. So, I'll throw this to you in this way to start this episode out. As a pastor, has that discussion come up a lot, right? Where people go, "Hey, what is this? What do you think about deathbed confessions? This person lived such a debaucherous life their whole life, and now they're saying they want to follow Jesus." Has that ever happened? I don't know. We've never talked about this either. Has that ever happened? That discussion ever
Hmm.
come up?
um, I can't recall one of the folks in our church bringing that up to me um, with skepticism. However, I think, I mean, on a related note, the thing that maybe the Hulk Hogan deal particularly might bring up is at where we are, the particular theological camp, if you will, that we kind of find ourselves in. There's a tendency to, when it's someone famous, there's all sorts of skepticism, right? Um, because I mean, rightfully so. People make claims all the time, and they turn out to be, yeah, okay, that was a whim that wasn't anything more than that, you know. Um, but not necessarily. Like, I think there's enough of an understanding of the thief on the cross, right? To understand that, like, actually, he didn't have his soteriology down, right, or his ecclesiology. Uh, so I think that that is a that's probably more normal for us, is the famous person made this claim kind of thing. I think deathbed confessions, um, I think, so from what I have experienced, I would say that there isn't, maybe not a skepticism like, yeah, I don't believe that, but more of a skepticism that's flavored like, well, the Lord knows if that was real or what. And to be fair, yeah, that's true. Yeah, only He knows how real that is or isn't in a person's life, and that's true on their deathbed or otherwise. Um, so, so yeah, I haven't had to deal with a whole lot of skepticism or questioning this or that. I would say that a lot of oftentimes it seems one or the other, where like there will be a person who is super excited and like just swallows it hook, line, and sinker, no matter evidence or anything like that, or what the confession actually looked like, or any of that. And then there's the person who maybe is a little more skeptical, and who is very much, that maybe skeptical isn't even the right word for that. Maybe what I see more is just like a responsible take about it,
Yeah,
like
cautious. Yeah.
praise God if that's real. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, more of a we heard about what Paul did, and if he comes around, we'll find out if he kills anybody, and that'll kind of tell us. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
for
think
sure.
yeah, I think the cautiousness. I think that's where. So with things like this, like the Hulk Hogan, like I remember when we were growing up in youth group, that anytime anybody even sort of hinted at, like, they wouldn't even have to say Jesus, they just said God from a platform, and everybody's like, yes, they're on our team, and you're like, I mean, maybe not, like, it's like it just seems like God as a general concept does not mean you're on Jesus's team necessarily.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that claim a God, but I remember that all the time. That if you even hinted at something even close to like a spirituality in a song, like I remember Evanescence. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Whatever that song was that was really popular. Like I remember everybody and their brother. This was probably more first years of college than it was youth group. But I remember that song went everywhere. It was getting played on Christian radio. Everybody's like, "Yo, we got a Christian band that's mainstream," and they came out. And they're like, "We're not though." And then I remember distinctively the Bible bookstores that carried their CDs like took them out because they're like, "We're not Christian," and they had been playing them and selling them. And so I think sometimes we, because of that culture of just jumping on that bandwagon so quick, we're a little bit more cautious now. And sometimes we're now overly cautious. And so it kind of comes in waves, right? So Kanye says he's a Christian, puts out an album that says Jesus, and everybody's like, yeah. And then he's like, also, I hate all these people. And you're like, okay. So it's one of those things where I think there is a good caution to have in regards to these things, but it's also where you say, well, okay, what is the fruit that's coming out from this confession? But you don't judge. I think you are very gentle in judging the fruit. So, for example, let me kind of parse that out a little bit. There are people that I know that have recently become believers, right? I'm talking in the last year or two. And there are things that maybe the way they say things, maybe the way they act in some regards, that's not like you're going, sanctification is still a process where
Yeah.
it's not that they're being heretical. It's not that they're being purposefully like defiant or vulgar. It's that there are things that were in their life for so long that are slowly being worked out by the Holy Spirit and them being in community and them reading the word, right? There are people that I know that have gotten saved that, they cussed all the time. And for them, right, them getting in the word and reading the scriptures and being in community, they're like, "Oh, that's oh, okay. So I'm supposed to speak differently now." Like because for them before, everybody they were around, that wasn't a thing. Like that was normalcy for them.
Yeah.
Same thing with some people that smoke or do things similar to that. Like there are people that have been in communities for so long that when they become believers, there are still some of these things that are in their lives. Usually it's like ways of speaking, vernacular, things like that they just don't know. They don't know. And so, and some of it's still their ways of life. I know there's somebody I know, an acquaintance. I wouldn't say like friend, but definitely an acquaintance in which their wife's mother and father got saved when they were living together. They lived together for a good couple months after they got saved, and the pastor was gracious and kind of walking with them through it. And then one day, the mom came to the point where it's talking about fornication, and she's like, "What does that mean?" And so he explained it to him, and she's like, "Well, we can't be doing this then." And he's like, "Well, you're exactly right. You shouldn't be doing it." And so they and so it was the gentleness and pastoral walk with them of being like, this is what this means, this is why this is important, this is why we live the way we do, that I think um that's like really just the walking with people through their salvation and sanctification.
Yeah.
And so this whole conversation about like people coming to belief later in life, like Hulk Hogan or something, there probably are clips you can find of him saying some not awesome things after he got baptized or after he became a Christian. I would say I'd be really gentle with that in regards to saying, all right, so is there a process where he's in community with other believers?
Mhm.
Is there a process where we can see like a definite change in his behavior, in certain regards? And so I think it's really important for us to be like, all right, let's judge the fruit, but the fruit doesn't just pop off the tree immediately. Like there's a
Yeah.
growth process. The apple tree doesn't just drop the apple, guys. Like there is a growth process in that. And so and sometimes there will be rotten fruit, and you identify that and you deal with that and you handle that. But I think as far as that goes, people late in life, or just in any time in life, but coming to Christ, there's this really, again, I think the way you worded it is good. There's this cautious optimism that goes, I'm glad you came to Christ, and now like follow him. Like actually, like the
Yeah.
way you follow him is going to be proof of that or not. And so, and then the deathbed confession thing on that regard, like you said, I don't know if you can harshly judge that or not. You're just kind of like, God knows anyway. So I'm not
Mhm.
gonna put somebody in or out of hell based on something they said on a bed. Um, I'm gonna hope for the best and know that God is good and gracious. So I think this also, and let's talk about this a little bit. I think things like this also should give us hope, because I'm sure you probably have people in your church that handle. I think there's probably people in every church that deal with this, but there are people that they love that don't know Christ, and they don't think they'll ever come to Christ. How do you kind of talk about that as a pastor?
I say that, um, eh, keep praying. And keep witnessing in so much as you're able, or put in a position to do so, because I think I think that um, one of it doesn't just have to do with what the scenario you brought up, but it absolutely includes that scenario. That one of the things that I think is tragic is um, that we we have lost in some sense the uh what am I trying to say here? We the the Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought. Um but it's early and I'm an idiot,
Yeah.
so
No,
I
no, no, no,
think
you're good.
yeah, no, what your question was what again? Remind me and then
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
remember.
So as you're pastoring believers that have people they love that are far from Christ and have been praying a long time and not seen anything come from
Okay,
that, what would you
got
say?
it. Yeah, okay. So the things that show up in our lives, right? Um the thing something that you gain as you're a Christian for longer, hopefully. Hopefully this is you. As you're a Christian for a longer amount of time and you see the Lord do things around you for a longer amount of time. Some of them you assume that the Lord does because eh, providence and whatnot. Some of them are like that had to be God. Like some of them are pretty undeniable, even for a bit more of a skeptic on with providence. But the the there's a huge advantage to that because it begins to shift you from being a person who's skeptical of of God being interested or God actually he does care about me. Actually, he does care about my prayers. Actually, he does listen to his children. It's not just something that you read about when in Exodus. So I heard my uh, children cry out. Like it's not just something you read about. This is a real, tangible thing. Um, Example: my wife and I have prayed for a long time for her family. Um, Among many others, right? Uh, her mom and dad. Uh, well, just a couple years ago, her mother passed away, and um, not long before she passed away, within just a couple of weeks, she made a profession of faith that seemed pretty credible, like credible enough that I would be like optimistic about that, you know. Um, since then, since she passed away, her father, her dad, um, has just a completely different life. He's in church. He became a member of the church. He prays. He watches sermons. Like it just the evidence is there, right? Just a completely different dude, and and that wasn't because we prayed about it for a week. It may not even have been because we prayed about it at all, but it that came through. I mean, over a decade of praying, and I know that there are people with far grander stories than that have prayed for like 60 years for my son, and now he's and I think that first of all, the Lord wants us to pray for those kinds of things, to be optimistic about it, certainly to hold everyone in our hearts with an open hand to him, because he knows what's best, what will bring him glory, and all of those things. But uh, but if I'm not praying for someone, I forget exactly how you worded the question, but if I'm not praying for someone because um like like why? Because I don't believe God can. I don't know anybody who would say that. I don't believe God wants to. I mean, that's a stretch, right? I don't believe God hears me. That's a stretch. Like, there's really not a good reason to not, I guess is the point, right? You're not going to come up with a solid theological
Well,
reason to just
I,
give up.
yeah, I think at that point you do have to own the reality that it's you that doesn't trust that he can or will or does. And that
Yeah, yeah.
it's not on him at that point. And that's a hard thing for people to hear sometimes when you talk to them
Hmm.
about it. Like I've prayed and prayed and prayed and I just don't know. And like you said, those three things you pointed out, you're like, I don't none of those sound like the God that you worship. And so at that point it's really there is a self-check where you have to be like, do I trust that he he does care? Do I trust that he can do it? Do I trust that he wants to? And so it's one of those things where it comes to, I think, um, there is this definite, and I think probably the reason this is on my mind is because I'm preaching a sermon about it. But there is a difference between just believing, this God that I read about, I believe in him, versus actually trusting that what he says in the scriptures are true. There's a totally, I mean, the demons believe in Jesus. They don't trust in him though. And it's one of those things that there's a difference between, I think, saying, oh, he is a person, Jesus is a person, versus trusting that he can save those. And I think it does. There is there is a real sanctification that happens when God just doesn't give you what you want right away. Because it does build, there is something that is built in you. Paul says this, I forget which letter, but there's this perseverance built in you from this hard work that's being done, in which now you actually trust him more because he doesn't just give you the first thing that he gave you, right? This is it's a secular principle as well. Like hard work is good for you because it actually builds something in you. That's why steroids are cheating, because you didn't actually earn them. And so, or you didn't earn the muscle you get from them. And so one of the things that I think is sometimes that we have to realize in the Christian life is the perseverance in this process is actually a better payoff sometimes. I mean, it's not that you wish for people not to know Jesus just so the better payoff, but it's there is circumstances in which you go, my prayer life is deeper because of this. My trust for God is deeper because of this. My understanding of his sovereignty over all things, it has to come into a line because of these other things. And what's
Yeah.
beautiful, I mean, like you said, as far as your wife's family, there is particular. There's a mom in our church. Well, mom and dad, they both come, and they have three boys. And the I know the dad had been praying for obviously his sons, but the mother in particular had really been praying for her boys. And her one of her sons came to know the Lord this last year, and not 4 or 5 weeks after that, he tragically passes away in an accident. And so it's one of those things that, not, outside of the Christian faith, nothing seems good about that.
Mm.
But within the lens of the Christian faith, you see that, one, the perseverance of this prayer of this mother that had prayed and prayed and prayed for her son to know the Lord, that had invited him to church, that had talked about the gospel, and that he gives in one day and comes because it's his mom, so he's going to come, and he hears the gospel proclaimed, and he gives his life to the Lord and starts living a distinctively different life, to where his girlfriend starts coming with him to church, tragically dies in an accident. His mom now has the comfort of the reality that her son, as Jesus rose from the dead, he too will one day rise, because he is one with Jesus. And now his girlfriend has become saved, was recently baptized, and is in the church now too. But all of that comes from these circumstances, these events that, you wouldn't plan out, you wouldn't want to happen in the particular way that they did. But it comes from this perseverance in prayer and trust and knowing the Lord. And that doesn't, I'll just say this, that doesn't eliminate any of the sorrow and the pain that is felt during the time that you're praying for this person to come to the Lord. It doesn't eliminate or diminish the pain that happens when death occurs, but it does put into a better perspective the thing that the Lord is working in one's life through these circumstances. And it's a really amazing testimony and a trust that we can have in the Lord, of he works all things out for the good of those who love him. So even in a sinful world with fallen creatures, he goes, I'm going to take that and make it good. I'm going to, even this rebellion and this, all of this terrible stuff, I'm going to turn it for my glory. So I mean, um yeah, I think that is an amazing testimony of this reality of this just perseverance, and how God, sometimes he, like you said, sometimes he doesn't let us see that. We don't get to see it. But when we do, we need to take stock of that and give him glory for that. So,
Yeah, I think the amount of uh the amount of sanctification and just spiritual growth that a person attains with by walking through what you're talking about, I'm not sure it can be quantified. It's insane how much that will actually help you. um I the two major options, when particularly when we're thinking about praying for someone, and not necessarily thinking it's going to happen, uh, typically the two options are, I either don't believe that the Lord can reach that person, um, uh, which is less mature. um, but I'm not saying that to be, uh, we all need maturing, right? Uh, but that's less, that has to do with God's capabilities, which rudimentary understanding of who it is we're talking about, would tell us that that's not accurate. Um, but at the same time, uh, the other side of that is, I don't think that he wants to. I don't think that he's willing to. Um, and And so I think, uh, the Jesus actually encountered both, several times, but the two times that it was very plain is in Mark 9, one of them, which is one of my favorite moments, because it really, uh, just famously, Mark 9, the I believe, help my unbelief moment, right? When the guy actually says, this situation is really difficult and terrible, and um, the boy who's possessed or demon oppressed and all of this, and he says, but Jesus asks him, how long has this been happening to him? From childhood. And then the dad says, it's often thrown him both into the fire, into the water, to destroy him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible to him who." So then it ends up the situation is taken care of. The Lord does what he does, right? Um and fixes the man despite his unbelief in that moment, takes care of business, right? Um then in Mark chapter 1, uh the leper down in verses 40 and 41 says, and a leper came to Jesus pleading with him and falling on his knees before him and saying, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." So there's no, I don't believe you can do this in the guy's thinking. But I'm not sure that you're willing to, right? If you're willing, you can make me clean. And moved with compassion, he stretched out his hand and touched him and said, "I am willing, be cleansed." And so he was healed and it was taken care of. And so now that's not a caveat to say, that's not like a promise to claim, right? That like you said that you were that's just a narrative. But I think that if the guy would have, first of all, like in the first scenario, like what you need to understand, Christian, is that we serve a God who spoke matter into existence. So there is no "if you can" for anything. Look back at Acts chapter 8 and 9 and read through who Saul was and who Paul is, right? And listen, in other places Paul describes how insolent he was to the Lord. And so that is meant to give us like this understanding that there's no such thing as out of reach to God. That's laughable when we put it in perspective. But the second scenario, I think, is a lot more Christians, even really mature Christians, feel this way, where like I don't think that he's gonna. I've prayed for it for, you know 5 years, 10, sometimes it even like a year, and that feels like forever. I've prayed for this for a long time. This like what I'm praying for is someone's salvation. It's not like I want a Lambo, right? Like this
Yeah.
seems righteous. And But he's not willing. Well, maybe he's just not willing to now. Just keep swimming, right? In the illustrious words of the great theologian Dory. um and I'm just kidding, don't subscribe to Disney Plus, it's a bad deal. But the we have to just keep swimming with that, right? Like you don't know the mind of the Lord. And so if what you're asking is a righteous thing, then there's no reason you shouldn't believe that God is going to do something miraculous in a life that seems pretty untouchable. Because he's God and he does, like your salvation was miraculous. um, I think sometimes that's a
Yeah.
problem too.
Just
We
just ask
forget
the
that,
people
like,
me and Rob grew up with if this is not a miracle.
yeah, yeah. Every like I love the when, and I used to think this way too, but like you see the guy who was a crack addict last week, he comes to Christ and now he's sober and he doesn't even have the temptation and whatever. And that's the guy that gets the speaking engagements because it's like, whoa, right? But every person who was dead in their transgressions and sins and is raised to walk in new life with Christ is miraculous. So don't feel for a second like first of all, there's a little pride in that. Like, oh, Mike seems pretty untouchable. Like he's like, look in the mirror for just a moment and imagine with me that you were pretty untouchable, right? And the Lord saved you. So um, yeah, there's more meat there than we would have time to walk
Yeah,
through
I mean,
several podcasts.
just those 2 verses, that's a whole sermon right there, buddy. You can build a whole sermon off that. But
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, that right there, I would say that's a good place to end, I think, is just recognizing the reality that God is able, God is willing, and it's a lot of trust on our part. And I think it's one of those things that when we do see it, we celebrate, and when we don't see it, we just trust. That there are God is working in ways, and I think you like you said, looking back, just look at yourself in the mirror. There are people and places that God put in my life specifically, in which I go, I know I had praying grandparents. I know I had praying parents, and I think my parents were probably wise enough to be like, "This idiot's not going to listen to us. We're going to still live like we're supposed to, but this idiot's going to have to have somebody else in his life. Lord, please put
Yeah.
those people in his life." And so I think part of that is just is trusting enough in the Lord to not think again. I think there, like you said, there is a pride to go, God, I've prayed so long, where's my answer? And you're like, well, that's, you're being very transactional about this. This is not some god of of another religion that you do a thing for him and he does something for you. This is not how this works. And so there is a faithfulness and a trust that you go, you are God, you are good, you know my heart, you know the desire I have, and I'm going to trust you with it. There you
Hmm.
go. And I'm going to be diligent in it. And like I said before, I think there's two things that happen there. One, there is a trust that is built in you in that process that you wouldn't rather other have, and there is a testimony that is built from that as well. That if something does happen, um, if again, this is where I think living in community with people is super important. That people are praying with you and for you on the same stuff, so that the answer, when and if the answer comes, they can celebrate with you because they know that they've been in it. I'll end with this story. I know Christopher Yuan. He tells this story in his book where his parents had been praying for him for a decade, and they let him know that. They let the church know that the church was praying along with them for Christopher. Anytime he brought people over, just so everybody kind of knows the brief backstory, Christopher was a homosexual. And so he'd bring his boyfriends over to the house, and his parents were not shy about, they treated, you know, Christopher and the people he brought with him as, as Jesus would treat people, but they weren't, shy about the fact that they were praying for him. They weren't shy about the fact that they knew that there was a life that God had for him that was better than the one he had. And so when God got a hold of Christopher, that was 10 years worth of prayer that not only they knew about. It wasn't just them that had been praying in secret and silence. It was their whole church was able to celebrate that. Christopher was able to see the seeds that had been planted and the way that God had worked through their prayers to work in his life. And I think that's another part of it is that be diligent in prayer, be purposeful in prayer, but don't just be like, well, I'm just going to be the one praying about it and hoping. Like, bring your church family in along with you for that journey and that ride, so that they can pray with you and mourn with you, but also hopefully celebrate with you as well when they see the answer to that. So that's my end thing. What's yours?
Yeah, and I think that we believe that God can. We believe that God is willing, and we ought to believe that God is righteous if He doesn't. Right, I think there's so much comfort in that
That's a
alone,
really
and
good
so
point. Yep.
I'll just end in Daniel chapter 3, which is, I think, the most quintessential moment where we see this happen in the Bible, where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego um, are confronted with the most uh, powerful being on the planet at the time, telling them. So he essentially is like, when you hear this signal, you need to bow and worship this idol. And they're like, I don't think so, Tim. Right. And he hears about it and brings them before him, and he's mad, and he's like, hey, is this right? You better do it. And they said in chapter 3, verse 16 through 18, here's their answer to him. They said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to respond to you with an answer concerning this matter. That's a pretty powerful moment there, right? If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to save us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will save us out of your hand. So he is able, he will, but if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden image that you have set up. So I believe that God can. I believe that God will. But even if he doesn't, he's righteous, he's God, you're not. So just do,
Yeah.
in this particular instance, keep pushing forward, believing that God can do, save the person that you're praying for, or whatever it might be, believing that God will, but then trusting God to do the right thing either way. Abraham did not see Christ come while he was alive on this earth, but he believed, and it was counted to him as righteousness.
But there was so much Bible in that last. Oh, that's such. You could. That was good. If you guys didn't recognize the goodness in the last 15, 20 minutes, you just, I don't know what to tell you. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful to you. Um, so yeah, just keep it up. I don't know. There's no way to end it. That was a perfect ending. So go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and like it. Go ahead and share it if you think it would be helpful to someone else. And we will talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.